Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and listening in. Sorry that we were a little late. We did run into some technical difficulties, but we're here now live and so excited to have another Enlighten with Sunlighten series. And I'm super excited to welcome Katie Wells, founder and CEO of Wellness Mama and Wellness with an E.com. She's a mom of six, and her expertise is in organization. I just had to add that in because she's such an inspiration to me. I have a mom of two, and what she does with six is just blows your mind. She has a background in journalism, and what's really special about Katie is she really was proactive and took health into her own hands and started researching to find answers to all of her health struggles, and she turned that into a blog and podcast. She's written over 1,500 blog posts, 3 books, and was named one of the 100 most influential people in health and wellness. And when she's not reading medical journals or creating recipes, which I love her recipes, or recording podcasts, you can find her outside in the sun with her husband, who she met walking across the country, as well as with her kids. Welcome, Katie. Before we get started talking about our such important topic, give us an update on how you're doing, with COVID. And I really want to hear, where you are now, as far as not literally now, but just how you're doing today and kind of give us a little glimpse of going forward.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm just like you, it's been a wild ride these last few months and trying to focus on the silver linings and the positives. I'm hoping some things stick around, like people are cooking at home a lot more, people are gardening a lot more, getting so many homeschool questions. I think a lot of families are braving that this fall. And I'm seeing a lot of micro communities forming as we're kind of like limiting large group stuff. I'm seeing groups of small little almost tribes and communities form. And I know for us, like we often have people over to sauna or just for like small dinner parties. And I'm hoping that we will remember the importance of those small in-person human connections, even when things quote unquote go back to normal.
Yes. So as far as mentally, because I think that's been at least, for me, this is a totally separate topic, so we won't spend too much time on it. But I do think you are an expert. One of your strengths is in balancing, if that's even such a word right now, with everything. Just being a mom and being a business owner, now being a business owner of 2 businesses, and then you throw in COVID, and and the playbook is upside down. So how are you doing with all of that? If you can give us any insights, that would be really great.
Yeah, it was an adjustment. On the one hand, a lot of travel went off of our plates, which was great. So we're home with the kids a lot more, but that's also meant a lot of kind of tweaks in our daily schedule and being very intentional with things like meals and outdoor time planning and just keeping the family routine in the midst of both of us working from home with kids around and then now jumping back into homeschooling soon. So we've had to be very intentional about schedule. And in all honesty, it's been a kind of time of inner reflection for me as well,
Mm-hmm.
because the first few weeks of the quarantine, I found myself really, really frustrated and almost like angry. And it couldn't figure out why at first. And I realized that it went back to actual past trauma that I had. And I had
Oh,
vowed that I
wow.
would never feel helpless ever again. And I had basically constructed elaborate ways to never have to feel helpless anywhere in my life, from having systems and self defense classes and all those things. And now there was this thing that was bigger than me, and I couldn't do anything to fix it. I couldn't do anything to help it. And it brought up all these feelings. So I tried to spend time in the quiet and in movement and go internal and work through that. And I think for all of us in different ways, this has probably brought up things or brought up family things or just all kinds of stuff has come as a result of this. And I'm reminded of my friend Erin's quote to never waste a trigger. So I feel like that's what the first couple of months of quarantine was for me, was prioritizing family and working through those inner challenges. And now looking forward, getting ready for the school year, and just really, like you said, keeping the organization and the balance a priority and being very intentional about that.
That's great. Would you say you are ready for the school year? Like, where are you, as far as being prepared?
I feel ready. I'm excited to get back into that with the kids. And I'm also working on trying to create an open version of our curriculum that we use for other families, because it's something that's been on my mind for a while. And I think right now it could potentially, hopefully, help a lot of other families with the idea. We built it from the ground up, realizing we didn't want to just create a school system in our house. We wanted to kind of 80-20 it and figure out the most efficient way to help our kids learn, but to prioritize our core values with them, which were things like creativity, critical thinking, innovation, connecting the dots, thinking outside the box, being entrepreneurs. So what is the best way to teach that? And the result was a fun curriculum that seems to be more effective, and it takes less time. So as I hear from so many moms who are overwhelmed and who are homeschooling, but think like, oh gosh, I have to do 8 hours of school a day. I feel like I need to be able to get some version of this to them and go, no, 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 you don't have to do that. We don't have to recreate the exact school system. There's some advantages of homeschooling, and then some parts that are harder, but you can work from the strengths of that.
Well, I really encourage you to get that out to people. I know that's not our topic today, but I mean, I know just from my, micro tribes and my personal mom community, that's one of the greatest struggles with what everybody's going through. And I think there's a lot of anxiety about going forward. People, most people I ask aren't as confident and as prepared as you just answered that question. So you could really help people significantly with sharing your experience. And I really encourage you to do that, because people need the help.
And I think as women and moms, especially, like, one thing we can all do is, there's so much uncertainty. We're all having a tough time with this. We can all acknowledge that and focus on our things we all agree on, and that we all want to do the best thing for our kids. And I think there's so much to be gained from us all just adopting an attitude of, I love and respect you and your choices, and let's form support communities and let's lift each other up, because there's just so much division right now. And I think if we can get back to building trust and unity and relationships, that is going to do so much to help all aspects of this.
Yeah, totally agree. Completely agree. And especially what you said something specifically about sharing, like the power of vulnerability and being okay to say, you know what, I've got a lot on my plate right now, or this is what's stressing me out. And knowing that the way that's going to be received, like having that trust, and confidence that whoever you're sharing it with is going to receive it with the way you intend it to be received. And that just builds that sense of community, and that builds just beautiful relationships and can have us grow so much more than we're growing. I felt like we started to, and then we kind of took a little bit steps back. So again, more like we have so many different things that we can address, but I know a lot of the people that are listening are really interested in the topic, which is all about sweat and the importance of sweat, and how it can really help, lead to a healthier life. And you've done a lot of research, on this. Of course, Sunlighten, we are familiar with a lot of the research as well. I'm really interested, and I have a lot of questions about your research and your findings. So maybe you can just start at a high level, and then we can kind of dig into some of the specifics.
Absolutely. Yeah, I will get to the specifics of the small scale study I did on sweat, and specifically sauna sweat, at the end of it. But I will say, unfortunately or fortunately, I've become a highly efficient sweater, which is fun when you live in Florida in the summer. It's gotten to the point where I can just go outside for 5 minutes and I'm instantly sweating, which has its benefits that we're going to talk about. When I started looking into this years ago, I found some fun facts about sweat. And with my kids, anytime we learn a new topic, I try to start with some fun stuff to get the engagement. So I found some really fun ones I wanted to share. The first being, women have more sweat glands than men. A lot of people don't realize that, but men sweat 40% more. So guys have more efficient sweat glands. You hear the saying about horses and pigs sweating. There's several sayings about that. Turns out pigs do not actually sweat, but horses do. And they're one of the few other mammals that sweat besides humans. As far as volume, the average human sweats 278 gallons per year, which is impressive. And I would guess I probably can top that right now, the level I'm sweating. But the more athletic or fit a person is, typically, the more they sweat. And every human has an average of 250,000 sweat glands. What's also really cool is there is a difference between normal sweat and nervous sweat. So if you've heard people talk about like nervous sweat smells weird, it's true. Regular sweat is usually comprised of water, salt, and some minerals, whereas stress sweat is released by different glands, and it's comprised of fatty acids and proteins that can interact more quickly with bacteria on the skin, and they do have a different smell. It also doesn't evaporate as quickly. So people who get nervous when they fly, for instance, or whatever, like if you have that nervous sweat, it actually is a different type of sweat. In sauna use or in exercise, athletes can sweat up to 6% of their body weight in a single session, which is an
Wow.
incredible amount of water. And then lastly, we each have our own unique sweat fingerprint that can be identified. So similar to our fingerprint on our hand, we have a mixture of different sweat characteristics that are unique to us. And the only place we don't have sweat glands are our ears, lips, and nails. So sweat is definitely a big part of the anatomy of our bodies. And I just thought that was fascinating to find out those things, but I would not have thought to look up.
That is completely fascinating. And I like knowing the gender differences. That's really like fascinating, as well as I'm glad you're sharing. We get a lot of questions, about sweat. And one of the things we found, just not on the study, but just from hearing feedback when we first started our company 20 years ago, is people who are athletic, which you just shared. I didn't realize that actually is a scientific fact, that people who are athletic will be more efficient, right, in their sweat. Because we found that a lot of people, it's kind of a little bit counterintuitive, because some of the people that really need to sweat the most don't sweat as efficiently as the people who are already fit. Does that make sense? Is that what you found as well?
Yeah, similar to how with athletes, they burn more at rest. Their basal metabolic rate is faster. So even without exercising, they're burning more calories than people who might need to burn more calories. It's the same thing. You can train your body to be more efficient. And women in general, things like heat exposure and sauna use are great because it trains us to sweat more efficiently. Like I said, we're at a slight disadvantage compared to guys for just how naturally we sweat. There's also two, like I mentioned, the two types of sweat. So there's,
Mm-hmm.
I might butcher the names because I've only read them, but the apocrine and eccrine sweat glands. And so the eccrine ones respond to body temperature or hormones, and that's the kind of nervous sweat ones. Whereas the apocrine glands are in like hair follicles, and that's more of a fluid. So basically, the type of sweat is different. So when you hear that phrase, good, clean sweat that comes from exercise or sauna use, it actually is a different type of sweat.
That's fascinating. And so the hair gland, so that must be where, so I was reading an article earlier this morning, about hair analysis, and it was relating to detoxification and, heavy levels of mercury, and how you can get that, from analyzing your hair, which is just fascinating to me. So that must be the clean sweat, right, from your hair versus like the nervous sweat, or well, I guess those are the two differences.
Yeah, and we can get into the composition of sweat when we start talking about like some of the specific benefits, including detox, because certainly you hear that sweating is great for detox, and that's one of the body's natural detox pathways. But we've kind of touched on the idea that there's two main ways that people sweat. There are health conditions that lead to people not sweating or sweating too much, but separate of those, it's often just movement and heat, so exercise or heat exposure. And in both cases, sweat is a really important bodily response. So when you work out, your muscle contractions are generating heat, and that's what's causing the sweat. And sweat is a cooling mechanism for the body, both internally and externally. And so that's why it's a response for the body when we exercise. Of course, sweat can also happen from heat, and this is one of the many benefits of sauna use. And I know why you and I both make this a huge priority in our lives, but it's also why saunas are considered an exercise mimetic. And I think it's important to understand the crossover here. There's been a lot of research about this. Dr. Rhonda Patrick is a favorite of mine, and she has gone into all the studies on sauna use, and she's explained that when we look at the studies, we find that frequent sauna use, which she describes as 4 to 7 times per week, is associated with a 50% reduced risk in heart attack, 60% reduced risk in all cardiac death, 51% lower risk of stroke, and 46% lower risk of hypertension. So it's drastic reductions. We're not talking small changes. These are significant variations and above standard deviations from the norm. And even one sauna session can lower blood pressure, improve heart rate variability, which is a really big metric people are looking at right now, and improve arterial flexibility, which is linked to heart health. So this is something, like I said, there's a ton of research coming out about all of these things right now, and it's amazing how quickly that happens. And one of the reasons they say sauna use is so effective for that, and where the crossover lies, is with sauna being an exercise mimetic. So just like exercise, when our muscle contractions generate heat, the sauna is generating heat in the body, which increases heart rate, it increases respiration, and it causes sweating. And all of those lead to those reductions in, like those really drastic reductions in dangerous activities that we see when we have heat exposure in sauna use.
Yeah, the recap of Dr. Patrick's studies was extremely helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it has been insightful. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years, but the additional research that we're learning about the consistency and the frequency is relatively new. Like, I knew it intuitively and from testimonials, but scientifically, again, kind of going back to that, it's really fascinating how often you should do that, and then how when you change how frequently it changes the efficiency, right? So let's take a specific benefit, because you started talking about detox, which it's so important, and for so many reasons, especially with COVID, like keeping the body not inflamed and clean. So what have you learned specifically as it relates to sweat and detox?
Yeah, so there's so many cool benefits here. And to your point, with exercise and sauna use together, if you stack them, they're actually even more effective. So
That's a great point.
you would want to, like, the frequency is similar in the studies, 4 to 7 times a week. We should all be moving our bodies and also sweating. And if you sauna after exercise, there's actually additional benefits, because you're kind of stacking the two benefits. Specifically related to detox, there are some really cool studies right now looking at BPA and other plastic compounds and their ability to exit the body through sweat. So pretty much anything we do to increase sweating is great for helping our body flush that. I think probably most people listening are familiar with BPA and why we would want to avoid it. But when it was introduced into our environment in the modern industry, they kind of didn't know at first, like, if it was dangerous or not. We all kind of agree now that we want to avoid it, but a lot of us still have decent levels of BPA stored in our body, in fat tissue, in our cells, and sweating is one of the body's natural ways to flush this. And I think that's a really important point when we're talking about detox to bring up, is that it's not taking over any aspect of your body and forcing a detox. So there are chemical ways to detox. You should always do those under the care of a doctor who knows what they're doing, because you could be moving around big amounts of dangerous things in your body and in your system. But when it comes to heat exposure, you're just making more efficient use of the body's own pathway. So you're supporting the body and doing what it naturally does. And both from the practitioner side and personally, my default is to always start by supporting the body in its natural processes first, no matter what. I feel like we should optimize all of the body's natural ways to stay healthy before we turn toward anything extreme, like any kind of extreme detox treatment. So I just think sauna is amazing, and heat is an amazing way to do that, and to pull things like detox and, like you mentioned, heavy metals, all of those things from our system by using the safe ways that our body has built in to do that.
Yeah, totally agree. And that's, the reason that we started originally was my brother had heavy metal toxicity, and so that's the only reason that, I am doing what I'm doing today, is because the infrared technology was able to pull everything out. Now we've learned so much over the years, and we, if I could turn back the clock, we would have been able to heal him so much faster. But at least, it did, lead to, a healthier life. I do want to mention, I do see all of your questions, and thank you so much. I will get to the questions, so please continue to ask them. I promise, we will get, I just want to make sure that you don't get frustrated if you're asking. So I want to get back to some of the additional benefits. So we talked about detox, which is so incredibly important, especially in the days of, opioids and all those types of things that we want to avoid, and we want to keep our kids away from. Let's switch gears a little bit to immunity. and, you know, talk about specifically for you, because it's such a hot topic right now, you know, what are the things that you're doing to help with boosting immunity, and maybe weaving in if there's any connection with sweat to that on your side?
Absolutely. So again, this is another area where I'm always in favor of supporting the body's natural pathways first. And I think there's some great simple ways we can do that range from having a clean diet. And I know everybody has their own kind of definitions of that, but we can all kind of agree on the eat real food aspect of that. Food that is ingredients, not that has ingredients. Also using clean products. So there's some really interesting data on when we know that the things we put on our skin get absorbed into the body. And a lot of these things, like babies are now born with a couple hundred chemicals already in their blood. And those are just the ones that can cross through the placenta. So we're exposed to thousands of chemicals on a daily basis. And prevention is always easier than cure. So to the degree that we can avoid those bad ones that we don't want in our body, that's a great first step. But again, sweating helps us get out the ones that are already there, that we've already been exposed to. So I think like using clean products, eating clean food, and then sweating helps any like excess stuff that we're exposed to. Also, sauna use stimulates the circulatory system and the lymphatic system. So it's getting those two systems moving and efficient, keeping them from stagnating. Anytime we are raising the heart rate and increasing circulation, we're helping the body move things more efficiently. So that goes back to the idea of supporting the body. I know you and I are both aware of a study that on subjects who use saunas regularly found they had significantly fewer episodes of common colds than those who didn't, and those benefits increased with time. As a personal hack, not medical advice, but I will say at the first sign of any kind of illness, will get in the solo and stay in there for a long amount of time and kind of induce whole body hyperthermia and give myself a mild fever. Because ever since I had Hashimoto's, I don't anymore. But since then, my body temperature, I don't spike fevers as easily as someone who maybe never had thyroid disease. So I use the sauna to help spike my fever, which is the body's natural way to fight pathogens in the body. And almost always that resolves it completely. I'll do that and then take some vitamin C and zinc and almost never get the full blown illness. So just like personal things like that, I find are very, very helpful for immunity.
Yep. That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that. I want to go back. You said something about products, and I want to take advantage of the fact that you're our guest and you know so much about, I mean, you've spent so much time researching how to develop clean products. And when I was doing some, looking at some articles about heavy metal toxicity, that same information is just amazing. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners know, but it doesn't hurt to remind them of some of the heavy metals that are in just common everyday products, that now you're, you know, dedicated to bringing cleaner products to our community, and we so appreciate that. But if you can maybe just touch and give some enlightening of some of those metals and what they're in and what to avoid, that would be really helpful.
Absolutely. So it's important to know there's not widespread regulation on cosmetic and personal care products, and manufacturers don't even have to necessarily fully disclose what's in them. So when they independently test things like cosmetics, perfumes, personal care products, they find all kinds of heavy metals. So you mentioned a couple, but things like lead and arsenic and mercury are found in these products, aluminum, as well as artificial fragrances and plastic-based chemicals, petroleum-based chemicals. And what I found personally, and kind of my impetus for starting Wellness, was that even some of my most naturally minded friends who ate really clean and who were cautious of what cleaners were in their house, they still used certain personal care products that had a lot of these unsavory ingredients, and it was because they worked. And I get that, because none of us want to sacrifice how we look or feel and feeling clean and fresh and beautiful for avoiding these things, and we shouldn't have to choose. And so that was my reason for creating Wellness, was let's tackle the biggest, toughest offenders first, the ones that there don't seem to be amazing natural options that work as well as conventional. So our baseline is it has to be not just safe and non-toxic, but it has to either perform as well or outperform the conventional alternatives and do it naturally. And taking advantage of that stat that I mentioned, that we absorb the majority of what we put on our skin, instead of just avoiding the bad stuff, to me, that should be a given. That's what every company should do. Let's put good stuff in. So we're actually benefiting the body from the outside in as well as the inside out.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's what we're dedicated to here at Sunlighten. So it's like a great reminder, is just making sure that we're purifying the body from the inside, right? And so then what we can put, back into our body is clean and healthy, and especially the products, we put, people just need to be aware. I mean, there's just so many different things that you use every single day that have aluminum and, I've changed so many different things in my house. And so I appreciate you sharing some additional insight on that. I do want to, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think a lot of people don't realize as well that our skin has a microbiome. So we are pretty well aware of the gut microbiome and the trillions of bacteria that live there. But some people don't realize our skin has an equally diverse microbiome. And for many of us, that's been stripped away from years of toxic product use and over sanitization and antibacterial soaps. But our skin microbiome is really important, just like our gut microbiome. And one of the best ways to repopulate the skin microbiome is through healthy sweat. So that depends on having a good internal environment so that what's coming out is healthy as well. But interestingly enough, if you have a good diet, your sweat actually functions in a similar way as a prebiotic for the beneficial bacteria on your skin. So sweating regularly, we know there's a lot of benefits for skin health, but another one people aren't as aware of is that it feeds the beneficial bacteria in your microbiome and helps fight out those negative bacteria that interact with your sweat to smell bad. So not only are you going to have better skin, but you're going to not have as much body odor over time.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I always remember when people talk about like smelly sweat. I know this is not the most attractive subject, but it reminds me of one of my first experiences in this space, 18 years ago with Dr. Klinghardt, who talked about how exactly what you just said, how when people are able to sweat deeply and efficiently, then the bacteria and, for a lot of people, some of the, nicotine and just some of the really heavy toxins that have been trapped in there are going, when they come out, they're going to stink, really bad. And I think for some people, they avoid, which I get. I mean, I understand that, but again, that's when people really need to do it and to keep doing it, and knowing that if you keep doing that and keep sweating, then you will, you can kind of reverse, your body and start to, being a clean sweater and not such a smelly sweater. It doesn't have to be. I think sometimes people think that it's kind of like what you went through with your experience, your personal health experience. And sometimes people think that, well, this is the way it is, right? And so I'm always going to have this experience. And I just must be a smelly sweater, for example, and it doesn't have to be that way. And so I appreciate your additional, insight on that.
That's a great point. And I have an article on Wellness Mama on an armpit detox that can be used in conjunction. You definitely want to be sweating as well, but this can be used before or after like a deep sweat session to help the body mobilize and pull some of that out so that you can at least shorten the process of getting all of that out of the body.
Oh, that would be awesome. So that's an article that if you can share that would be great.
Yeah, and if anybody just Googles Wellness Mama armpit detox, it should come up as well.
Okay, perfect.
But
Thanks
just a natural recipe you can make at home that helps your body naturally do that.
Oh, that would be fabulous. Okay, so I want to get to a couple of questions before we continue some of the questions that I have. This one from Joyce is really fantastic. I have a personal connection to her asking about if the sauna is safe for women who are trying to conceive. And I mean, I'm sure Katie would, you never want to take the place of a medical professional, advice, but how would you answer that, Katie? I can give my perspective as well.
Yeah, so like
you said, the question?
I did. And not medical advice, always ask your doctor for sure. I will say, I think it's really important personally to prepare the body pre-pregnancy and conception. So I think anything you can do to help the body's natural detox pathways before you're pregnant, that's an excellent time to do it. I will also say, I did use sauna personally before pregnancy, while nursing. Even again, check with your doctor. That's not advice. That's just what I did. Also not advice, but when I visited Finland, I saw pregnant women in the sauna and nursing moms who didn't have their babies with them, but nursing moms in the sauna. So I think work with your doctor, do your own research. But it was something before I got pregnant, I was very comfortable sauning. Are you there? Connie, are you there? Connie, are you there?
There's Katie.
Hey. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
She's back.
Can you guys hear me? I can hear you.
Okay. Sounds like we're back.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh. Like. Katie?
I can hear you, and I
You can
think
hear
they
me.
can hear us. They say they can hear both
I
of
can't.
us. Let's see.
Everybody says they can see us both, but they can't hear us both.
Okay. I wonder if they can. I can hear you, Connie. I don't know. I wonder if they can hear me at all. Sound is on my end. They're saying they can hear.
People say they
can't hear me.
Okay. So other people say they can hear us both. I can't hear Katie, but it's more important for everybody else to hear Katie. So I tried to summarize that question about conception. Hopefully everybody heard it. It was just a great answer. I mean, essentially get your body as clean and ready as possible on not, you know, the woman and the man. I mean, it takes two, right? So that's really important. And so I would just ditto everything that Katie said. So let's see here. I want to make sure there was a couple of really specific questions to sweat. Here we go. So this is a question we get a lot, and I would love to hear Katie's perspective. Is after exercise, or you know, after using a Sunlighten sauna, let's just call it after sweating. What should you do? Should you rinse off, or should you scrub? Like a lot, people ask us that a lot. They're wondering what happens to things that you're sweating on your skin.
So my personal take is I dry brush before to kind of stimulate the skin and the circulatory system to begin with. And then I rinse with warm water after, but I don't usually use heavy soap or detergent. And if I do, I'll use it only in the areas where you have the one type of sweat glands that have more interaction with bacteria. So just warm water for most of the body. And like if you would want to use soap, I would use it like on armpits and like personal areas.
Okay. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other benefits of sweat and get into. I know one of the things a lot of people have experienced, especially like with COVID, is putting on some extra weight and not moving. So if you can speak a little bit to weight loss and maybe any of science that's connected.
Absolutely. So the actual weight lost during a sauna session is usually almost exclusively water. So that's not in and of itself an immediate and effective weight loss therapy. So this is the reason that wrestlers will use this to cut weight, but it's not a long-term weight loss strategy for that reason. That said, it is effective in helping with as part of a weight loss plan for other reasons. So we already talked about sauna use being an exercise mimetic. It can burn, from what they've studied, up to 600 calories an hour, which is equal to or more than running. And I personally find it much more fun than running for an hour. I love to sprint and lift heavy weights. I'm not a distance runner, so anything I can relax and burn 600 calories an hour, I am all for that. But we're finding that, like I said, since the sauna provides many of the same benefits as exercise, it can help with weight loss in many of the same ways that exercise would. They have shown that regular sauna use, most likely from the heat and all of those factors we talked about, did help with weight loss over a 3-month period. They saw a reduction in
that would be awesome.
In weight, waist circumference, and overall weight. And so basically, the sauna is going to stimulate a lot of the same benefits of exercise, not muscle growth. So that's why it's also important to still move and lift weights. But it will stimulate many of the cardiovascular benefits and the circulatory benefits, which over time helps the body to remove excess waste and to more efficiently deal with and burn things like extra glucose in the blood, insulin. Anytime our circulation and our heart rate increases, that's helpful. So as an exercise mimetic, heat and sweating and sauna use is beneficial in the long term for weight loss. It's just that immediate weight loss during a sauna session is almost always liquid versus fat. Connie, I can't hear you now. Connie, can you hear me? I cannot hear you at all.
Can you hear me now? Okay. People can't hear the fact that I. Uh-huh. 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 It's just people can't hear me. Hello? You can hear me now? Yeah? Okay, so I'm getting some feedback that people are hearing me. So, Katie, can you hear me? Yes? Oh my goodness. Okay, great. So can you answer the question about kids, with a mother of 6, like speak to that aspect regarding specifically, let's answer the sauna question that's there as far as can kids use saunas, but then also if you could just speak a little bit about kids and sweating, that would be really helpful.
Uncomfortable, and we tell them to listen to their body, and when they feel like they need to get out, then they should absolutely get out. But we do let our kids in, and the older ones, my oldest is almost 14, and he'll stay in as long as my husband and I stay in anymore. In Finland, like I mentioned, visiting Finland, saw lots of kids in the sauna even at very young ages. And so I think obviously temperature is an aspect. You don't want them in there if it's too hot, and you don't want them in there for extended periods of time, or you don't want them to get dehydrated or lose too many electrolytes. But just like with adults, and even potentially more so, kids have that really important need to sweat, whether through movement or through heat, or ideally through both.
So people are asking me, Katie, they couldn't hear that very beginning part that they really want to hear of the. So can you repeat, because you came on at the end, what you said about kids? That would be really awesome.
Sure. Yeah. Quick summary that just like adults, even more so than adults, because kids' bodies are smaller and they're more impacted by their exposure to different chemicals and toxins. They have just as much of a need to sweat regularly as adults do. And if that doesn't happen enough, we think they actually lose some of their efficiency over time. So we want our kids sweating from exercise. And also, I feel comfortable letting my kids in the sauna until their body tells them they need to get out. So I tell them to listen to their body. And when it's uncomfortable, of course, you don't want kids in there longer than their body feels comfortable. You don't want them getting lightheaded or losing too many electrolytes, but kids can handle heat. And in Finland, I saw many kids in the sauna. One thing scientists talk about now is that we all often, not probably all of us listening, but many people exist in a very narrow temperature range between 65 and 75 degrees all the time. And so we don't get what they call thermo exercise, which is the body having to regulate and adapt to different temperatures. And so in a modern world where the air conditioning or heater is set within that narrow range, saunas are a great way to give our body that thermo exercise. And of course, to sweat, like we've been talking about. So my personal take, again, always talk to a doctor, but is that kids can sauna safely as long as they are comfortable in there, and when they feel like they need to get out, we should respect that.
Thanks so much, and I'm really sorry to everyone for all the technical difficulties. I'm going to start to wrap up, but I want to make sure that to tell the audience, we will absolutely answer any of your questions. So if you want to send in questions, we will answer them. And again, apologies. This is such great information and great research. And I mean, I could just continue on. I can't hear, but I want to make sure I want to ask the important question about mood specifically as it relates to sweating. Because I really think, like, I know personally, it makes such a big difference. And like I said at the beginning, so much of what I've learned over the years is through experience and through feedback and through from doctor sharing. But I didn't have a lot of the scientific support that Katie's sharing, and Dr. Rhonda Patrick has shared, and I know Dr. Raison did a study on mood and depression, and how specifically that being in a consistent heated environment can really help your decrease depression and increase your mood. and it makes it, I mean, for me, a huge difference. As far as the science, Katie, do you have any information on specifically like increasing mood and sweat?
Absolutely. And to your point, I think all of us have had that experience at some point, probably of through either exercise or after sauna, that feeling of endorphins and dopamine and all of those, we feel better. Like many people report feeling so much good, better after sweat. So there's the runner's high. Many people report the similar type feeling after heat exposure and sauna use. And there's a reason for that. Just like with exercise, heat exposure creates, as an exercise mimetic, that cascade of hormones that leads to you feeling better. It leads to the release of beneficial compounds in the brain. It helps your body deal with excess insulin and cortisol and the things that can mess with your neurotransmitters. But beyond that, so sauna exposure, like I mentioned, when I use it for warding off illness, it can be a type of whole body hyperthermia, which just means exposing the whole body to heat. And when that happens, it's actually been studied for treatments of several depressive disorders, including major depressive disorder. And what they found was that whole body hyperthermia, or in other words, heat exposure for certain amounts of time, worked as a rapid acting antidepressant and rivaled even some of the medication. So again, nobody should go off of medication without working with a doctor, but there's a lot of promise in regular heat exposure, and the benefits were cumulative over time. So the more a person saunaed and the more regularly a person saunaed, the more benefit they saw.
Thank you so much. This is such an important topic and such great research. We're going to have to do like another, a follow up on this, because I have so many other questions to ask you. One thing that I think is really important is talking about like brain boosting and brain hacking, just like as far as kind of similar to the mood, but a little bit different. And so I was just wondering, before we kind of run out of time here, if you are able to share anything specifically related to like your head and mentally, like brain, as far as relating to sweat.
Absolutely. So, as I touched on a little bit with the mood thing, sweating in general and the movement of the circulatory system and lymphatic system, plus the heat itself, which is a type of hormesis, from whether it be from exercise or sauna, that works on this cascade of neurotransmitters in your body, which is why we see the antidepressant effects, and also why people just report feeling so much better and having lower resting heart rate and all of these benefits after sauna use. I saw someone mentioned that when they do daily sauna, they feel depleted and worn down, and wondering why is that. From personal experience, I can offer a tip that it could be an electrolyte thing. It could also be potentially a detox reaction if you're new to sauna, but if not, there could be an electrolyte component. So I found personally that when I started saunaing every day, I needed to increase my uptake of certain minerals. So I take magnesium regularly, and I also use a powder called Element, which is spelled LMNT, which has calcium, or sodium, magnesium, and potassium in the right ratios that our body needs. And for many people, that can solve it. So making sure we get enough sodium in our food, we're not depleting electrolytes, that can be a big key when we are doing a lot of regular sweating, whether it be from exercise or sauna use. And there is a lot of interesting research regarding magnesium and sodium right now as well. But that was my personal solution, was to increase, like pretty drastically increase my intake of those, and that resolved any fatigue.
Thank you. So we have a special offer for those of you who are listening, and I want to make sure that I reference this before we close. If you just have to mention Wellness Mama on the Sunlighten side, and you will absolutely, get a very special discount that are for Wellness Mama customers that we have designed for this promotion. And I know, I think Katie's doing something special as well. And you all absolutely should check out wellness with an E.com. And so much of her research is all incorporated, into these great new products that she's bringing to market. It's really important to learn more and to, take advantage of the research that she's done for you. So Katie, you want to share your special code?
Absolutely. So, like you said, the website is wellness.com. That's wellness with an E on the end. And for anybody listening, the code Sunlighten10 will save you 10% site wide. And we have all kinds of natural hair care, as well as a remineralizing toothpaste and also now hand sanitizer. So, you guys can check those out and save 10% on everything until the 26th.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to give my email address, which I don't normally do here, but I really want to make sure that people are able to connect if they have additional questions, and I will make sure that you get all of the information that you need. So you can email me directly. My personal email is C as in Connie Zack, Z-A-C-K, at sunlighten.com. Anything else that you want to know about this topic, please let me know, and I will make sure I'll talk to Katie, and we'll get you the information, the answers that you deserve. So I really apologize again for the technical difficulties. Thank you guys so much for hanging in there with us. Thank you for joining us and supporting us. And Katie, I wish you the absolute best, and I can't wait till I can see you live again in person. This has just been so difficult, but thank you for everything that you're doing to help people live healthier lives. We really appreciate you spending this time with us. So thank you
Thanks so
so
much for
much.
having me. And apologies on my end too for the technical difficulties, but it was great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm pressing